Welcome to part 3 of the new user training series. In this data entry demonstration video, we're going to be going over street outreach projects. So in street outreach, when you first encounter a client and to input their data into the awards database, you're going to click on Intake Admission, at which point you're then going to select the program. This is called Training Street Outreach. And you have two options. You can search for existing clients using identifying information, any combination of first name, last name, social security number, just initials, or you can search entering a screening date range. It defaults automatically to look for the last 6 months of clients that you've had contact with. So I'm going to leave it to just look at the last 6 months, and I'm going to click on Continue. And in this project, it's brand new. We haven't put anybody in. So I'm going to create a new contact, and a contact information sheet displays. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to enter the initial contact date with the client. And now all of the demographic information, with the exception of, let's see here, it is all of them, are going to default to data not collected. The expectation is the first time you meet a client, you're not going to get all of this information from them in that first meeting. So HUD is aware of this. If you're HUD funded, Continuum of Care funded, or ESG funded, they told the vendors that it was appropriate to have all of the fields pre-populate as data not collected. And as time goes by, the more information that you can gather from the client, you can update it as you develop a relationship with this person. So you've entered your initial contact date. First name and last name are going to default to person unknown. The only problem with leaving this set as person unknown with a social security number of all 9s and a birth date of 1/1/1901 is that as we're entering more people that we've had contact with, they're all going to start kind of being entered as the same person because they have all the same demographic information. So if you're not able to get a name from the person that you're having a contact with, you can change their first and last name, maybe to something identifying as, red jacket or blue hat, something along those lines. For this purpose, I am going to say that I do have the client's name. So we met this woman, her name is Avocado. But I'm not going to ask her any more information than just what her name was upon meeting her for the first time. So I am going to change the name data quality to this is the full information. Race defaults to data not collected. Veteran status, all of the living situation information defaults to data not collected. Income, non-cash benefits, and health insurance do not automatically default to data not collected. However, That's not information that's expected to be collected when first meeting somebody, so it is acceptable at this point to set them all to data not collected as well. The special needs section of the disability elements, those are all going to default to data not collected. Domestic violence does not. So we just need to enter the date, the information date, and then we can follow that up with data not collected. Engagement date, it's not a required field, and that's because we're only going to enter a date into this field when the client becomes active in a relationship that results in a deliberate client assessment or the beginning of a case plan. So unless and until this person becomes engaged in services, we're going to leave this engagement date blank. The other thing to know with this engagement date field, that unless and until an engagement date is entered, the data quality of this client does not count as missing or null data in any reporting. It's entering an engagement date that is going to trigger that change. So we're only going to enter that engagement date when we develop that relationship and they begin to engage in services, and we can collect that information from the client. So we're going to leave engagement date blank for now. And then we have to enter the zip code of last permanent address. Now, this field, it's labeled zip code of last permanent address. However, you can enter the zip code of where you met with this person in this field. So that is the demographic portion of HMIS data entry when entering client and contact information. You then move on to the encounter information. Encounters are expected to be collected and entered every time you have an encounter with this person. So you're going to enter the contact date, which is going to be the same for the first time you meet with somebody as the initial contact date. So we're going to enter 1118. Then you need to select the location where you met this client. Right now, Washington Park is what we have in our training database as locations. As you go through and you start entering locations in the other field right next to it, this location list is going to grow. So you need to enter the location in which you met the client. And then you have to answer if the client is staying on the streets emergency shelter or in a safe haven. And that's yes or no, or you were unable to determine. Those are the required elements to be collected with each and every contact you have with a person. There are these additional elements that you can answer. You can enter the GPS coordinates, shift information, tour information, outreach worker. This is going to be a drop down of the users who have access to this project. You can select a reason for this encounter, any behavioral indicators, whether or not you made any referrals, and were any of those any of the following services accepted by the client? So accepted or refused, and they all default to not offered. And then there is a text field where you can record a note. Once you've filled out all that information, you're going to click on Create Contact. So now this is going to create a running list of contacts that you've had with this client. This program is set up to data sharing. Most outreach projects are not. So if you do see this data sharing form within the database, if you're just meeting the client for the first time, probably not a good idea to ask them if you can, like in addition to letting them know, hey, I'm going to put your information in here, probably, just not a good time to ask them if their information can also be shared, depending on how that contact goes. So it is okay to just set it to I do not agree to share and click on continue, where it's then going to display it in report mode that can be printed out for filing purposes if you want to keep that in the client's file. Once you click on continue, now their encounter information, contact information is all just going to display, and you could then add new encounters if you're kind of running back in data entry. But what we're going to do at this point is we're going to go back to the home page, and that's it. That's all there is to getting a client's information entered into the awards database when you have contact with them. When you have a second encounter with that same client, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to click on intake admission. And now at this point, you can type in the client's initials, click on continue, and now we can see that Avocado is in this program. Her last contact was on January 1st in Washington Park. If we click on her name, we have the option we can update any of this contact information by simply clicking on either her first name or last name. It's going to open up that demographic information for us again, that if we've been able to collect any of this information, we can update that information here. Or we can jump back if we didn't collect any of that information, but we've just met with them again. We can add a new encounter. So we'll simply click Add New Encounter, enter the date that we saw them. Now, location is not displaying as a required data element on this additional contact. So if there's no red asterisks, you do not have to fill out that field. If you leave it blank, that is okay, because what funders are really looking at is the date and whether or not the client is on the streets, emergency shelter, or safe haven. That's HUD language for, is this client literally homeless? So again, you're going to answer with no, yes, or I was unable to determine. So I'm going to say yes. If I made any referrals, if I offered any services, I can fill out all of that information and click on Update. And now we can see that there have been 2 encounters with this client. So that's how we record that information. It's really just a matter of getting them in at first, which is why everything defaults to data not collected, and then recording all of the encounters that we have with them until they become engaged. What HUD is looking at is the average number of encounters that it takes to engage a client in services. So now I'm going to go back to the home screen. Recording services and progress notes are not something that's done with outreach projects. It's really recording those encounters. So the majority of the work that's done in awards for outreach projects is done through the intake admission module. However, HUD CoC funded outreach projects that have to submit an APR, an annual update is required for all clients that are in program for 365 days or more. Regardless if you have made any real progress with this client, whether or not you have the required information, an annual assessment still has to be processed in the awards database in order to generate the APR without errors. So to process an annual update, we're going to go into Profile, making sure that we're in the correct program, and we're going to click on Face Sheet. We're then going to select our client, and we're going to scroll past this demographic information because we want to go down into the HMIS info section. This is the section of information that must be completed every year that a client is in program within 30 days before to 30 days after the client's anniversary of their admission date. So this is a brand new program, and Ava's not been in the program for 365 days. So I'm not able to complete an annual assessment for her yet. However, when you click on Update HMIS Info History and it displays in data entry mode, it's this effective date. This is the date that must be 30 days before through 30 days after the anniversary of their admission date. So the first time we met Avocado was 1/1/2018. This effective date, if she's still in program within 365 days, this effective date needs to be somewhere between December of 2018 through the end of January of 2019 in order to not have any errors display when running and submitting the APR. So I'm going to enter a date Now, under annual update, it's telling me this client is not yet required to complete an annual update. And that's fine. Whoops, 18, because they're not yet required to complete an annual update. But let's pretend that this is next year, and instead of 122.18, this says 122.19. Underneath where it says annual update, it's going to say this is an annual update. If at this point we still don't have their income information, non-cash benefit information, or health insurance information, then we don't have it. It is what it is, but we still have to complete the assessment within awards simply by entering that effective date. It's that effective date is what's going to trigger that an annual assessment has been completed. Keep in mind that what we went over in the previous training is that the disability elements, or special needs as they're known in awards, are only to be updated in the admission record. We never want to update them in the client's face sheet or at discharge. This series of elements is only updated in the admission record. For most projects, I've been able to completely remove this section of data elements from the face sheet and discharge record completely. So you may not even see them on your face sheet and discharge, which would be great. So you would enter that information. If there was any updates to complete, you could complete those updates, and then you just simply click on update. And when the face sheet displays in report mode again, if you scroll down all the way to the bottom of the HMIS info section, what you're going to see is now we have an HMIS info update history. So we can just easily see when their HMIS info section has been updated. So we can see that on 1/22/2018, there was an update completed. You then have the option to click on the pencil icon to edit that information if you have to. There's the delete icon. You can delete that update if you need to. And then there's the view icon, where if you click on that, just the HMIS info section for this client is going to display, where you can just look at it. And in this case, you can do a Control P and wait while it loads. And you can just, if you just want the HMIS info section portion of their face sheet to put in their file, by clicking on the preview icon and then opening it that way, that will allow you to just print out that section for the client's file. I'm going to return to the home screen, and I'm going to go back into intake admission. I'm going to click continue because I want to go back into Ava's record. And let's say we've seen her again, and at this point, we were able to ask her a couple of questions. We didn't ask her for her social security number, but we did ask her what gender does she identify as, and she told us. We asked her what her birthday was, and let's see, 1975. She gave us her birth date. So now we can enter her birth date and we can change the data quality from data not collected to full. We asked her ethnicity, and she told us, as well as she has identified as multiracial. We didn't ask any other questions. We just kind of stuck with those this time. And she's still not engaged in receiving any services from us. So I'm just going to scroll to the bottom and I'm going to update that information. Again, because there's no engagement date, the data quality on her admission record is not going to count in any reporting unless and until she becomes engaged. We don't worry about the data quality. It's not pulled into the APR. It's not pulled into any of our data quality and completeness reports. It doesn't count. But because I did just meet with her and I asked her those few questions and updated that information, I do need to record a new contact. So we're going to say that happened on the 19th. And at this point, I was unable to determine whether or not she was literally homeless. And I'm going to click on update. So that's really what data entry and awards consists of for outreach projects, is entering them and just continuing to record those encounters with the ultimate goal of engaging them in services. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on her name again because let's say now I have all her information. She's decided, to participate in case management. So what we're going to do is we have her full name. She didn't want to give us the full social security number, but she gave us the last 4 digits. Said she's not a veteran. And then we moved on to her living situation, where she did indicate that she is literally homeless. She's been living in a place not meant for habitation. The length of stay, the amount of time that she's been staying in this place. She's been there for more than a month, but less than 90 days. And approximate date homelessness started. It defaulted to the initial contact date when we first created her record, because the date field is configured to only accept a date. So we can't default it to data not collected, so it just automatically defaults to the initial contact date. So if that is different, you'll just select the date that this episode of homelessness began and follow that up with, regardless of where they stayed last night, the number of times the client has been on the streets in emergency shelter or safe haven in the past 3 years, including today. So it's 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 or more times. And then what is the total number of months homeless on the street in emergency shelter or safe haven in the past 3 years? So we're going to ask Ava to think back to her first episode of homelessness and tell us how many months she spent homeless that first time. We're going to do the same for her second episode of homelessness and then this episode of homelessness. And we're going to add all of those months together. And we're going to select the total from this drop-down menu. So we're going to say she spent 7 months within the past 3 years as literally homeless. And now we do have to answer income, non-cash benefits, and health insurance information. If she does have any sort of income coming in, you're going to select yes for income. And once you select yes, the monthly income sources section becomes required, at which point you're going to have to select the type of income that they have coming in and the amount of that income. Non-cash benefits and health insurance works the same way. If they have non-cash benefits or health insurance, you have to then select the type or types of non-cash benefits or health insurance that they have. If you say no, then non-cash benefits for the types is no longer required, and you can click on all those little boxes until your heart is content, but nothing's going to happen. So now I'm going to answer whether or not she has health insurance, and I'm going to say yes, she has health insurance, and we're going to indicate that she's covered with Medicaid. You do not have to answer no for all the types of health insurance that she doesn't have. You only have to indicate yes for the type or types of health insurance that she does have. Now we're moving on to the disability elements or the special needs. And those do need to now be answered. So we're going to ask if she's ever been diagnosed with a physical disability, developmental disability, chronic health condition, HIV or AIDS, a mental health problem, or substance abuse. Now, there's no documentation required for any of this information to be entered. This is all self-reported. So she says yes, she does have a physical disability. Now that we selected yes for physical disability, the follow-up question now becomes required. The follow-up question says, is this expected to be of long continued and indefinite duration and substantially impairs ability to live independently? So is this physical disability so severe that it has contributed to any past episodes of homelessness? Or could this affect housing placement in the future? And that we're going to answer yes or no. And we're going to say no, her physical disability did not contribute to any of her past episodes of homelessness. And no, this isn't a considering factor in future housing placement. She says no, she does not have a disability. No, she does not have a chronic health condition. No, she's never been diagnosed with HIV or AIDS. Yes, she has been diagnosed with a mental health problem. And again, now that we selected yes, we have to answer the follow-up question, which they are all the same. So is this mental health problem so severe that it has contributed to past episodes of homelessness, or it will be a factor in future housing placement? And she says yes, that it is her mental health problem has contributed to past episodes of homelessness. substance abuse. She says that she does abuse drugs, but then says no, her drug use did not contribute to any episodes of past homelessness. So, disabling condition. Right now it's defaulting to data not collected, and that's because in her face sheet, those disabling condition special needs questions were there, and they had pre-populated to data not collected. So because that was the most recent update for her, disabling condition on her admission form is going to stay as data not collected for right now. However, like I said, in your projects, I have been able to turn off the special needs questions within the HMIS info section of the face sheet and the discharge record. So this will not be a factor when you do update a client's information when they engage in services. We do need to now answer if the client is a victim of domestic violence. If they say yes, we need to enter when did this experience occur and are you currently fleeing? So the response options for when this experience occurred is within the past 3 months, 3 to 6 months ago, from 6 to 12 months ago, or more than a year ago. And then, are you currently fleeing? My computer is acting a little slow right now. Is yes or no. Now we're going to enter an engagement date. Ava has agreed to begin case management with us with the hopes of securing housing. So now that we've entered this engagement date, all of the data quality or all of the elements that are required do count in terms of data quality. So now we really need to make sure that we don't have any responses of data not collected. In addition to client doesn't know and client refused, we want to make sure that we have all of that information. So now we can update her admission record and it's not letting me use her social security number because I've used the social security number for every client that I enter. So let's see. One thing to keep in mind with social security number is that if you don't have the social security number, that field needs to be recorded as all nines. If you only have the last 4 digits of the social security number, that field needs to have the first 5 digits recorded as nines with the remaining 4 digits of their social security number. And that's because anything other than all nines, or the first 5 digits being nines, it's going to record on the back end as being a real social security number. So that's just something I want everybody to keep in mind. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to give her a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. social security number with the data quality that I have her full social security number. And let's see if the database is going to throw me any more strange information. Okay, it's not supposed to go to to the outreach locations section. At that point, it should have brought us back to her contact form where we could add a new contact. So I'm going to go back into her form. Making sure that I select the correct program, which would be just regular street outreach, and click continue. Now I'll click on Ava's name again, and all of her contact information has been updated. So now I just need to go back into her encounter information, click on add new encounter. So I'm going to put in the date in which she agreed to participate in case management services. I'm going to answer whether or not she was staying on the streets in the emergency shelter or safe haven. And I'm going to click on update. So now this shows on the record, in her record, that we had an encounter on January 1st, on January 9th, on January 19th, and again on January 22nd. So that's how we put clients into our outreach projects, how we update their encounters with them. That's the main piece of the data entry that's completed, is entering all of the contacts that you have with the clients. Now I'm going to show you how to discharge a client from the program. So to discharge a client, you're going to click on discharge, making sure that you've got the program selected for the client who's going to be discharged. Click on process discharge. And you now have two options. You can discharge a client from your current program roster, or you can open up a discharge record for a client that's already been discharged. If you need to edit that discharge record, or if you need to print that discharge record, you can do that by clicking on discharges from and then entering the date range that the client was discharged within. I'm going to leave this selected to current program roster. I'm going to click on continue, and I'm going to select Ava from our drop-down menu. I'm going to click on continue, and her discharge record is going to display in data entry mode. Now, because her face sheet was updated before before we entered an engagement date and updated all that information there, that's why everything on her discharge record is displaying as data not collected. So you can update her information within her discharge record so that you have all of the correct information at discharge, or you can do another face sheet update prior to opening up her discharge record. So the first thing we have to do is we have to enter a discharge date. In this situation, we're going to say that she agreed to case management services, and we collected all that information from her, and then she came into the office and decided she didn't want to receive case management services from us, and she never wanted to see us again. So we're going to discharge her from the program. So we're going to select her discharge date. And now, like I said before, at this time, you can update the income, non-cash benefits, and health insurance information for your client if it is different than either their admission record or their most recent face sheet update. Again, on your forms, you're not going to see the special needs section on your discharge records. So what we need to do now is enter the destination. So where did the client go? Now, if we're going to discharge a client without them ever engaging in services, data not collected is what the discharge form is going to default to. And because an engagement date was never entered, discharging them to a data not collected destination does not count in any of the data quality that's being looked at in the reports. But if you do know where the client is going to, there's an extensive list, and this is where in the previous training video where I said we beg everybody to please not select other, especially if there's an engagement date, we really don't want you to select other. We want you to select the destination which most closely matches where they're actually going to stay. So in this case, our client was literally homeless, came in, said she didn't want to receive services from us, and she was just going to go back to living her life. So we're going to select that she was going to, where did it go? Place not meant for habitation. And we're just going to assume that she's staying in the same county. So we have to select the destination and the residence county. There are all kinds of places to enter discharge notes. If that's something that your program does, ask your program director if they require discharge notes to be completed within awards, and if they are, these are all text boxes. You just simply type in all of the information, and then you click on apply. And once you click on apply and the discharge is processed, it's going to display in report mode so that if you want, you can click on the print icon and you can print their discharge record for their file. With that, I'm going to congratulate you on completing the final video in the new user training series. At this point, head back over to our website, complete the data entry quiz. Remember that you need to pass with an 80% or higher. And then what you want to do is you want to send me all of the required information. So that'll be the new user agreement, the user access request form completed by your supervisor, and then a screenshot of all 3 test results. Once I receive all of that information, I will issue you a login.